Now we want to take you live to Vaughan, where Mayor Stephen Del Duca is making an announcement related to protests at certain institutions related to hate crimes. We'll listen in live.
Community Center. Of course, more recently, we have had large, ugly protests that have taken place near synagogues, schools, childcares in Thornhill that I know and we know were deeply, deeply concerning to our residents. Enough is enough. What we have seen is not peaceful, it is not respectful, and it does not reflect our values. The right to protest is fundamental to what it means to be a Canadian, but this right is not unlimited. When people are engaging in protest that crosses the line into inciting hate and intolerance, crosses the line when they're intimidating others, well, at that point, something needs to be done. Words and statements and posts on social media are no longer good enough. What we are witnessing represents a wake-up call that requires a call to action to protect vulnerable social infrastructure here in our community and to protect the individual residents who use that infrastructure. And that is why today I am announcing that I will be introducing a member's resolution that, if passed by Council, will direct our staff to prepare a bylaw that prohibits demonstrations that intimidate or incite hatred, or violence, or intolerance within 100 meters of a place of worship, all places of worship, all religious institutions, schools, childcare centers, our hospital, congregate care settings, and other forms of vulnerable social infrastructure. Let me be really clear about this. Everyone, every single person living here in our city deserves to be safe and to feel safe, especially when they are in vulnerable parts, vulnerable places of our community. The places where our kids go to learn, where people go to access vital health care, where our families go to drop off their kids at daycare, or where our residents go to worship. There is no tolerance for hate in the city of Vaughan. We are an inclusive, welcoming community, and we always have been. We celebrate our rights, but we also recognize the importance of the obligations that we have to one another. We are a community where we look out for one another, and we will continue to do so. We are a community in which we know we can disagree without being disagreeable and without resorting to hate. And just before I take questions, I do want to remind everyone, this is not the first time that this kind of measure or these kinds of measures have been contemplated or deployed by government. Prior to the last provincial election, there was a bill, Bill 86 as it was called at the time, that was introduced and debated in the legislature. It was known as the Our London Family Act. That bill included many, many schedules, one of which, I believe it was Schedule 9, called for a 50-meter buffer around places of worship. In my past role, I supported that legislation then, I support it today. We also know that back in 2021, the federal government, in the midst of the crisis that was COVID, also introduced safety bubbles around hospitals again, to make sure that in that case, people using the hospitals, accessing them, and those working there could remain safe. Nothing in what I'm talking about this morning is meant to take away from truly peaceful protest. We are talking about those protests and those demonstrations that very clearly cross a line, a fundamentally important line that I believe as Canadians, and certainly as Vaughan residents and leaders, we have to protect and uphold. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll now take questions from the media. Our first question is from Jeremy Bergeron from Radio Canada. Please go ahead.
Hi, do you hear me well?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Perfect. So sorry, there was a problem with the link, so I missed the first 4 minutes of the press conference. But can you please tell us, are you asking today the government to step up as well, and maybe the provincial government to do the same as what you want to do, basically? And why would that be important?
So yeah, look, I am pleased that we are taking a leadership role here in the city of Vaughan, that we are stepping up. I think it is an important thing to do, to demonstrate leadership at all times, especially in difficult times. As I mentioned in my comments, I know that the legislature did consider at the time Bill 86. By the way, I didn't mention this in my comments, but I'll say it now. That legislation, the Our London Family Act, many will remember, was legislation that was developed in the aftermath of the horrible tragedy, the 4 individuals who lost their lives in the city of London, an incredible, hateful act that took place at that point in time. There were so many people who worked hard to develop that legislation, again, the Our London Family Act, but in particular, the National Council of Canadian Muslims showed incredible leadership bringing forward that bill. Again, I supported it at that time. I do hope that other levels of government will take this threat seriously, that they will step up, whether that's the provincial government, the federal government, other municipalities. Again, I'm pleased that we are leading here in Vaughan, but this is not something that is impacting only our city. So I will leave it to other levels of government. I have spoken with representatives of other levels of government. I do hope that this begins a move towards protecting vulnerable social infrastructure with meaningful action.
Thank you. Jeremy?
Just a follow-up. Oh, can I have a follow-up question?
Yes,
Yeah?
Please go ahead.
Yes, so just tell us for
Okay, but listening in is Vaughan Mayor Stephen Del Duca outlining a proposed bylaw he's going to propose for the city of Vaughan, prohibiting any demonstrations that incite violence or hatred in and around places like synagogues, daycares, churches, schools, etc. He says there have been some large and ugly protests over the last several months, and he wants to make sure that at least in the city of Vaughan, that those come to an end.